Hello and welcome to the Surplus Geek podcast. I'm Jake, and today I am joined by Robert from Ro.CBRN. How's it going?
Good, good. How about you?
I'm doing pretty good on this nice Sunday. We already recorded this episode once, but we are recording it again because things changed in the last 2 weeks. And real quick, before we start talking about such current events, I just want to say that our opinions are our opinions, and we may get things wrong, fog of war and whatnot. We don't know. Things change, information gets updated. So if we say something wrong in this episode, and in 3 days, new information comes out, we apologize. We're not going to record an episode every day because, you know, that's pretty much what we would have to do. Every hour, we'd have to record an episode because things are changing so rapidly. So with that being said, uh, because Robert here is actually from Eastern Europe, he has a different perspective from probably most of the world, who is very much so only affected by the gas prices going up. Um, what have you seen so far in your experience living, in a NATO country that's bordering a country that's being attacked?
Well, the first thing that I was actually expecting to see was a lot of Ukrainian cars putting here, but because I live in the very south part of the country, I think I've seen only one of or two of those cars. And there's a lot of news that a lot of Ukrainian refugees are coming here, which is actually true. But funny enough, they are not staying here. And I can understand that. First of all, Romania is not the greatest country, and second to that, most of Ukrainians have, as far as I've heard, have a lot of relatives and friends in Poland, and a lot of those Ukrainians that come to Romania come here just because they couldn't cross to Poland because maybe they were too far away from Poland and closer to Romania. Uh, and what amazed me is that uh, as I told you privately, is that we and Romanians are not the best friends, the best neighbors. Although a lot of the people, a lot of Romanians mobilized extremely fast and gathered a lot of supplies and food and clothes for. I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing. I've seen on news. I've heard from friends and YouTubers how many there was so much food for refugees that they had to throw it away because it expired or something like that. And I've seen a list of products that were necessary and a list of products that weren't necessary anymore, like baby diapers or something like that, because there were too many. That's one of the things. And speaking more about the military side of the situation, maybe a lot of people didn't heard about this, but as I told you previously, there was a very weird incident here in Romania, in the southern part of our country, where we are also neighboring Ukraine, the southern part of Ukraine. One Romanian fighter jet that was patrolling the sky uh, disappeared from the radar, and obviously a rescue and search team was sent with a helicopter, and that one crashed again after like 11 kilometers, so not that much. And this happened in the second part of the last week, and everything is forgotten now. Let's say they said the authorities, they said it was because of a blizzard and bad weather in general, but they just forget about it. It's like, yeah, 8 people died because of bad weather and the old technology from our military, and yeah, that's it. And it's quite weird, especially happening in the same time with this crazy war happening as well, and that close to the border and as an area. And like everything is kind of chill here. Like our politicians keep saying that, yeah, it sucks that it's happening so close to us, but nothing is going to happen because of NATO, and probably wouldn't happen because some people have some skepticism when it comes to NATO, and I used to be like that. But NATO send a lot of troops here from different NATO countries like Italy, Germany, United States, and they keep coming here. We also have a NATO exercise with a lot of like technology and vehicles and troops for all around of the NATO thingy. And I don't really believe anything will happen here because I now truly believe that we will fight together. But NATO and Russia war, the direct war, I think that also means nuclear war. that's the thing that scared the people the most here. First of all, they emptied the shelves of iodine pills like crazy, even though people, I mean, people don't even know that iodine pills are useless if you are over 40. Like, you can take as many as you want, they are useless. Second to that, people don't know that iodine won't save you from radiation poisoning or many other bad things that happen during and after a nuclear explosion and fallout. And people are, this is the thing that scared the most here. The the things that Putin said about his nuclear forces or something like that. Actually, at the moment, I'm currently looking for another job, and I've already talked with like two companies, including one that I've used to work for, and I have very good relations with my manager. And he said, like, we have to postpone these talks because we don't really know what's going to happen.
Hmm.
And everybody's scared about the so-called nuclear war here, actually. They don't care that much about what is going to happen with all of the refugee crisis. What if we will have a normal war, a conventional war? They're scared of the nuclear war.
Yeah, and I think that's something. That's the serious implication of this is that people think that we can just go in and help Ukraine, especially in the United States, and it's like no. I mean, NATO goes against Russia. You're right. That's probably almost a guarantee of a nuclear war, and that's the last thing that we really want. And I
Yeah,
don't think people realize that it's. I mean, it was immediately after Russia, like Putin announced his nuclear forces are going on high alert that the news
yeah,
started putting
exactly
out
the thing.
like, how do you survive, the radiation? How do you do this? How do you do that? And I'm like, yeah, this is just bad. It's like you don't want that situation to happen. I know everyone like thinks it's going to be like Fallout or something, and I'm not saying everyone thinks that, but people think that like it's going to be Stalker or Fallout, and yeah, and it's
Yeah,
like, although Stalker would be pretty scary, but um, you know, it's it's it would be devastating, and you, our our actions have to be very precisely calculated to prevent such an event from happening, and and that's why NATO can't really do anything. I mean, it's
yeah, yeah, yeah,
unfortunate, but it is what it is. And honestly, I don't want NATO to do anything because I don't want to push us closer to um, that possibility. Because with this whole invasion thing, Putin's done something that no one thought was. I mean, a lot of us didn't think. We talked in the previous recorded version of this. We talked about it. We both didn't think that Putin was actually going to invade, and then 4 days later, Russian troops are crossing over into Ukraine, which is insane to think about. That is we're now going on over a week and a half of invasion, and I don't know. It's just one of those things where it feels like we're living in a different universe, in an alternate dimension, because it doesn't feel. I thought 2022 was going to be great. It felt like it was going to be the year. Looked like we were going to finally beat COVID back enough that things would start to return to
yeah,
normal. And then next thing you know, Putin's like, "Nah, we can't just have a normal life. I got to invade Ukraine." And I like I said, I think it's important to get your perspective on this, only because you living in a NATO country, bordering a country that's going to war, you seeing this movement of troops, and you're talking about earlier off stream about the B-52s flying around above, Romanian airspace. That's insane.
yeah,
That's that's the next level of preparation from us. And I mean, back in the day, that was normal. In the '60s, we used to have B-52s flying around literally 24/7, and then things happened. We realized it wasn't a smart move, and we stopped doing that. But it's I don't know. This whole thing, I don't know. This whole thing is weird to me. It's surreal. It almost like I said, it feels like an alternate dimension because as we were talking off stream, it's interesting to see some of Russia's better equipment. It's a mix of older and newer equipment being thrown into this fight. And some of
yeah,
their better
yeah.
equipment isn't faring too well, and or is being abandoned, which is even stranger. Um, so I don't know what your take is on that, but you've seen what I've seen, and it's pretty wild.
A thing that I've discovered recently, everybody agrees that the morale of the Russian army is very low. They don't really want to fight and stuff like that, and probably that's why we see so many abandoned vehicles. That's why we see so many farmers taking them. Um, and there's another interesting thing. Uh, Probably as me, you've seen a lot of videos with captured Russian soldiers that keep saying that they don't know why they are there, that they knew that we were there only for training, and suddenly they were in Ukraine and they were lost and they don't really want to fight and stuff like that. Uh, I actually fell for that. For the most of the time, I was really feeling bad for those soldiers, but I've read some articles and some historical stuff, and actually that's a Russian tactic.
Hmm.
When they invaded Hungary in the late 50s and Czechoslovakia in the late 60s to stop their revolution, the captured Soviet soldiers back then were saying the exact same thing. We don't know why we are here. We knew we had only a training, an exercise, and suddenly we are in Prague or Budapest. Like Soviet and Russian tactics didn't change that much, and
Yeah.
I think that applies as well for the quantity over quality. They send there everything, bad or good, technology from previous 1991 and technology after 1991, and Godspeed.
Yeah, that's what it seems like. Yeah, because they're sending in the older model T72Bs pre
Yeah,
B3 variants, and then they're sending B3s and T80 BVMs and even T90s, which
yeah,
and I mean, and their anti-air capabilities. They're sending all the Tor M1s and the OSAs and Tunguska. So it's not like they're sending in all their bad stuff, but they're also not. They're also set there. It's weird too because it feels like they're sending in both their professional army and some of their not so professional army, the conscription based forces and stuff. Um,
it seems like they sent. I mean, what I've seen from videos, from news and stuff like that, it seems like the only things that actually inflicted some damage was the ballistic missiles and unguided missiles, and probably the use of the thermobaric ones,
yep,
if that's actually legit, because you cannot be sure of anything right now. And as
of course.
fighters, I think only the Chechens and the special forces, those
Yeah.
with a V. But besides that, the regular army seems like only cannon fodder.
Yeah, it does. It does feel that way, I know people think like, "Oh, that's just Russia," but they're not. They're not the meme that we all make them out to be. So it's like they do fight. They have fought and won, and done. It's not like it's not like the Soviet army into the Russian army. It's not like they're completely useless. So it's weird seeing them as a what we'd call in the U.S. as a near peer enemy, someone who's near to us in capabilities. Because it doesn't seem like they even have night capabilities. Because I don't know if you noticed, but like the fighting almost stops at night. They switch
Yeah,
over.
yeah.
They switch over to shelling places using artillery and barrages and stuff, but they're not actually doing the fight. Like United States, we always talk about owning the night and how important it is to own the night, and we rely heavily on our night vision and thermal capabilities. And it just feels like the Russians aren't using that, and it's bizarre because it doesn't even feel like they're using combined arms. It doesn't really feel like they're
Yeah,
using their infantry with their mechanized units and then
and
using air
aviation.
support. Yeah, it just feels like they're just like parading through and thinking they're just going to walk through and it's just going to all work out. It's bizarre from a cuz from my perspective being someone who trained to be a tow gunner and take on Russian equipment because that's mainly what we trained against. We were taught to fear some of these vehicles. We were taught that if you lased, I mean it's probably true to a point. We were taught that if you lased a Russian tank, they knew that you were lasing them, that they have, lasing uh I forget the name for it, but basically they can detect that they're being lased. I don't know how true that is now because it doesn't. Well, I mean, I don't think you need a laze with a javelin. Javelin works very differently from a tow, but still, a tow you don't have to laze either. You don't have to laze. Lazing is just for figuring out range and stuff. But There's other ways you can passive range, and but like we were taught to fear these vehicles because you once you fire off a tow missile, you kind of just gave away where you are. So you better hope that the thing hits, or it's not like a javelin where you fire the thing off and then you're like, I'm out of here, I'm leaving, I'm scooting, and finding a different firing position. So we were taught this thing to fear, and I'm not saying I've lost that fear or lost that respect for their armored vehicles, but it does change your perspective a little bit in terms of a U.S. in a hypothetical situation, U.S. versus Russia. How effective would we be? Now, the difference being is, and I think this is something people need to realize, is if Russia was defending Russia, they're going to fight tooth and nail. They're not going to be like
Yeah,
they are now. This is Russia
yeah,
invading another country that they clearly don't want to invade. I mean, Godspeed to the people protesting in Russia. Um, I mean, they're getting arrested. This is not a free country in the sense that at least us Americans are used to in terms of protesting, and they're up there protesting immediately, and I don't know if they can really make a difference because the way the geopolitical their political situation is in Russia with Putin and stuff, but I think it's important to note that there's people in Russia who don't want to be doing what they're doing. It, it's not like the invasion of Afghanistan in 2001 where we went in Afghanistan and everyone was behind it because we were all ready. We this bad event happened, 9/11 happens, and we were like, we gotta go, and then next we're there for 20 years. But that initial first couple years, we wanted to be in Afghanistan. We wanted, there wasn't really an anti-war movement. Iraq's different. Iraq is a completely different ballpark. But they invade Ukraine, and within a day, there's already protests. So it's, as far as we know. I mean, I would assume that that's legitimate news that there's actual protests in Russia because I feel like that's harder to, you know,
and for the previous question that you had for me, how is it feeling here in Armenia? What's the vibe? There is a very funny part. I mean, you remember at the start of the pandemic and when it started to spread around the earth, that there was a lot of people that didn't believe that there was a virus.
yeah,
Here are, and I believe everywhere, there's the type of people that don't actually believe there is a war.
yep, yep. I've seen that
Like,
too.
what? What?
I mean, yeah, it's one of those things where you can show someone the stuff happening, and they'll figure out a way to mentally work around it and stuff. I mean,
Oh, and by the way, sorry that I'm interrupting you.
no, that's fine.
One of the biggest news network here, which is full of garbage usually, uh, like most of them, but this one especially, they've actually they were actually commenting and debating over an Arma 3 video,
Oh,
like live
yeah.
with a Romanian general.
Uh,
They were like, "This is legit." And even the general was like, "What the?" And I mean, our reaction towards the general's reaction was, "What the fuck, are you this dumb?" Because at some point in that video, I don't think it was even a Russian fighter jet in that video. It was set on the night mode, let's say,
yeah.
and at some point the fighter jet was shot, and the player, the pilot, ejected. And the general was like, and yeah, you can see here the Russian pilot ejecting from his plane, bro.
I know.
It's
It's
from a video game.
the same thing happened with the footage from DCS. There was footage from DCS that someone said was footage from Ukraine, and I mean that was a little bit more convincing than the Arma 3 footage because the Arma 3 footage just you see it immediately and you're like, oh, that's Arma 3. But the DCS footage, people were like, oh yeah, this is actual footage and stuff, and it's like, no, that's from a video game as well. It's that's the thing.
And
That's the problem with this war. It's the first truly 4K war, but also it's got the misinformation aspect of just all that going on at the same time.
there is another thing that I realized since this war started. Actually, two things, including what I said previously with that general. How fucked up is our army? We have a lot of generals that were made generals on the political way. Like for example, we have a general, 1 star or 2 star general, maybe even bigger, that he has nothing to do with the military, but he's there because he was a very good tennis player during communist regime and so on. And we have a lot of generals that they are there just because of politics. They have absolutely nothing to do with war or military in general. So if we were not in NATO and the state of our military, it's horrible. As I said, we don't have attack helicopters. We have very old air force, like from the 50s. Our newest planes are second-hand F-16 planes, uh, and the tanks, everything. It's very old, very under-equipped. If we were not in NATO, the Russians or maybe even Ukrainians could take over us in like a few days, and not only because of the poor state of our military, but also because of the mentality here. I've kept reading articles and reading the comments from fellow Romanians from different groups, different social people. Uh, Nobody wants to fight for our country. Nobody. Everybody's saying if Russia attacks us tomorrow, I don't give a damn that we are in NATO and United in European Union. I'm going away. I'm leaving this country. I do not have anything to fight for. I don't care about anything. I don't care. I think like if Russia attacks us tomorrow, next day, tomorrow, I think 90% of our people would leave. Like we don't care about this country. And that's
Ah,
quite sad.
it is a thing that happens, I guess. But yeah, I don't know. There's certain parts probably in the United States that would happen where people would just be like, well, looks like we're being invaded, and I
I heard I heard I mean I you are American, but I cannot agree with you. I mean Americans seems very patriotic from here.
yeah, but it depends on the area. It's such a large country. It depends on where you are, what state you're in, what's your view on your local, regional, country politics and stuff. Some people would just be like, I don't think they would welcome it, but I think they'd be apathetic to it. It depending on the way the invasion happens and stuff. Because I think some states they just especially the larger states where you might not even know something's happening in your state because it's such a large state. Look at Ukraine, Texas, Ukraine. They're about the same size mass, and not the same shape, obviously, but they're about the same
Hmm.
rough size mass. Um, so it's like you might not even know something's going on until it actually gets to you. So we probably. The thing is, I don't know. The United States is very weird right now in terms of. I don't want to get too far into it, but we're very weird in terms of our view of the country and our united or not unitedness. We're kind of all over the place. You got to, I don't know. It's very weird. So I don't know how we would react. But I do know that, I feel like in your case, at least NATO would hopefully do something. It wouldn't leave you guys hanging. Uh, but it's such a tricky situation because I don't know.
And there's one more thing that I want to add. As you've said, you don't really feel it until it hits you. Uh, there are two things that scares people, and it scares people here, and also me as well. First of all, that's the same logic we applied for the pandemic. It's not here, it's in China, it's not going to affect
Oh
us,
yeah,
it's not a
yeah.
new thing uh, until it hit us. And the same people say about the war in Ukraine. Yeah, it's in the neighboring country, it's a big country, but we are a NATO country, it's not going to happen anything to us at all. Are you 100% sure about that? And second to that, as we said in the previous podcast that wasn't published, I didn't really believe Putin will invade. Why wouldn't that apply for the nuclear problem?
Yeah. No,
The
that's
the,
a good
chan-
point.
the chances are smaller, very very thin, but they are there.
I think we're closer now. I think we're the closest we've been to proper nuclear annihilation than we have been since the Cold War. I think that's the sad reality of this current situation. Because like you said, we both thought, this was never going to happen. and he did it. So I mean, we don't know what's going on in Putin's head. We don't know what his grand plan is. We don't know if there's anything, there's no way to predict what he's thinking. So, and again, the logic of invading Ukraine seemed, and even then, if he would have invaded Ukraine to just secure the separatist regions, not that I would have, obviously not that I supported that, but I understand that from a, like, I can see it from a tactical or strategic point of view. But to go straight for, multiple fronts, to attack from multiple different areas of the country, and then to also go for the capital, to then, in a sense, probably, obviously, I think the theory would be to take the capital, take the country, kind of thing, cut the head off the snake, and I that just seems like that part I definitely did not see coming. I see the again, I see them trying to, I see them maybe cutting land to get a water line, to get to water and connect that part of the separatist region down. That part I saw, and a lot of people talked about that before this happened and said that's the most likely objective. And now we're looking at this, like, week-long bombardment of Kiev, and
Mm.
it's yeah. None of this, to me, none of this makes sense. The Russians using actual airborne operations in an active combat zone that's not secure is mind blowing. Even when we used, I think in 2003, I can't remember if we did it in the invasion of Iraq, but when we use airborne operations, it's very specific and it's very carefully planned and executed. The Russians seem to be just, they're doing it like World War II tactics, where they're just dropping guys in and just saying, "All right, you land, you'll figure it out," blah blah blah, and then they're not even, they're dropping these guys in and then they're not getting there, because when you drop airborne troops in, the idea is that, you drop them in and then a spearhead's supposed to meet them there, because otherwise they're just surrounded the entire time. And we saw them flying in their cargo, transports, IL-76s, and getting shot down, or at least I'm pretty sure that was confirmed. Again, this stuff is so, there's no way to know unless you know, and I don't live in Ukraine, so I don't know. But I don't know.
There's two things that I want to point out to what you said, and things that I've heard from news and from, like, military veterans. Like, you cannot say that United States won in Afghanistan, uh, or I don't know. In America, it is considered that the war against the war with Iraq was won. Let's say
Yeah,
something like that. Okay, uh, and even if you cannot say that the war in Afghanistan wasn't a winning or won one, uh, if the Americans did it how the Russians are doing it now in Ukraine, I think there would have been much more soldiers, American soldiers, and NATO soldiers that would have died in Afghanistan. What I want to say is that why are not Russians learning from NATO countries and NATO interventions, like bomb everything, use your aviation as much as possible? As you said, why they don't use it on night? Why do they have any ability to fight in the night time?
yeah,
And after you are sure you bombed everything from air and you have air supremacy, full air supremacy, even today, some people say that there are still Ukrainian planes flying around, and the drones, obviously.
yeah, yeah,
So the Russians don't have air supremacy. They do not have full air support. They they throw their soldiers everywhere. And besides that, I think this is a personal opinion, is that if Russia is not under attack, they 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 are not motivated to fight.
yeah. I would agree with that. Yeah,
And we have plenty of examples from history. First Chechen War, the war in Afghanistan,
yep,
Sino-Russian War, and so
yep,
on. But when Germans attacked them and came close to Moscow, they were total beasts,
yeah.
freaks.
I would agree with that. I think you're right. I think that once they were backed in kind of into a corner, though they had all of Siberia behind them, once they were
Yeah,
backed into that corner, Russia, like, when, like you said, like, beast mode, and they just demolished the German military all the way to Berlin. It was like they were unstoppable. I mean, if they would have, if we would have just started a war between Russia and the Allies right away, I don't know if we could have stopped them, because they were
yeah,
just
probably not.
a wall of just death coming forward, and there was nothing you could do about it. And they were on top of it with, tactics and figuring things out, and you know they they started switching things up and doing things differently and stuff. And like you said, the fact that they seem to they almost did like a miniature version of what we do, where they use cruise missiles and ballistic missiles to pepper an area before going in. But it's like they did it for like 3 hours and said, yeah, that's good enough. They can't survive that. And then they went in there and they're like, oh wow, they can survive that. What's going on? Like when we Desert Storm. I mean, how long was the air war in Desert Storm? It was I don't want to say a number because I can't remember, but it was a couple of weeks if I'm not mistaken.
Oh,
And yeah, we went to town on Iraq's air anti-air capability, and then we went to town on every other hard target we could get. And we kind of did the same thing again in the invasion of Iraq in 2003. We did it in Afghanistan, although Afghanistan's a little bit different because of just the nature of their situation in 2001. But like, yeah, when we went in Afghanistan, we had special forces go in first, and we the difference in Afghanistan though would have been we had the Northern Alliance, or what would become the Northern Alliance again. They were pro American, or at least pro or anti Taliban. So we had that pro force, and they kind of have that in Ukraine with the separatists. So it's like, why not start? I can see cutting off the Ukrainian army by where the separatists are, encircling them. But they did. They kind of didn't. They're kind of doing that, but they're kind of not doing that. They're spending so much resources on taking the capital that I think that they're missing the bigger picture. And this war just seems like you said, it just seems like they didn't learn from our mistakes. They didn't learn from their own mistakes, and that they're just kind of just
mm,
throwing people in different directions. And it's I can't stop saying it because it's so weird to me. None of this makes sense to me because we've been taught for so long that Russia's a legitimate enemy, or a legitimate country, a legitimate fighting force, and they right now don't seem. And maybe it's just because they're invading another country. They're not good at invading other countries, which is probably a
yeah.
good thing. It's actually probably a really good thing that they're not good at invading other countries. It's probably a bad thing that the United States is good at invading other countries, but that's besides the point. But it's just, it kind of destroys that narrative that Russia's been this ultimate threat for all this time, because clearly, unless this is all a ruse and it's supposed to be that way, the false sense of security or some weird crazy conspiracy like that, it does kind of neutralize this Russia threat to Eastern or just Europe in general. I mean,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
could I'm going to say this, and now Russia's going to invade Poland, but like, like it's just because every time we say something in the last episode and now this, I'm like, I don't want to say anything because it's like Russia's going to be like, oh, gotta invade Poland now. Two random dudes said that we weren't going to do it.
I
Um,
think they have no chance against Poland, to be honest.
oh no, Poland's like, you know what? We're sick and tired of being taken over. We're not allowing this
Yeah.
anymore. They Poland's scary. They have quite a developed military now. I mean, they have they got Leopards, Abrams now, and their domestic T-72 variant, or I think it's a T-72 variant.
At this point, I mean, in a parallel universe, but at this point, I think Poland could take over Germany,
Yeah,
like with their technology.
yeah, that's true. Probably. Yeah, I mean, now that Germany's finally starting to think about things and they're starting to, I don't know if I like Germany beefing up their military though. It's kind of a weird situation to be in,
Probably
but
for good. I mean, for better cause this time. I don't
hopefully.
think they will do the same thing the third or fourth time, depends what you count.
I think Germany just needs to get independent from Russia's, or from their energy demands from Russia, because that's the. I mean, even the United
Yeah,
States relies on oil from Russia. It's a problem. Energy dependency is,
and cheap uranium.
yeah, yeah, it's a problem. It's a serious problem, and you know, I don't think people will get that. That's why Germany. I mean, I think some people get it, but it's a big deal for Germany because securing energy is one of the most important thing in infrastructure. So I can understand. I don't agree with Germany's decision and how long they waited to even help Ukraine, but I get where they're coming from. I guess I just think that they were wrong in the sense that they should have been looking at Germany's they're kind of in a bad situation because they're kind of landlocked a little bit. They don't really have natural resources, so they're not like the United States doesn't shouldn't have to worry about this. We have resources, we're just not currently using them. And um, yeah, I don't know. It's just this whole situation is just bizarre. You know, I don't. I was. We were all right. So I think we're actually. I think what we'll do is because we were going to talk about some other stuff, but I think we're actually going to wrap it up talking because I think we spent. I think we're going to keep this episode on the shorter side. I'm going to have you come back on though soon, and
Definitely.
then we'll talk surplus and stuff. I know this episode didn't have anything to do with military surplus, sort of. Although there's probably going to be a lot of military surplus hitting the market soon. Um,
Ho ho ho, PFK4 and stuff like that.
I mean, it's not.
Ratnik.
It's a terrible thing kind of to say, but it's kind of true. There's probably. I mean, I'd be surprised if we don't see T-72 showing up on eBay. But do you want to own a Russian tank? And it's kind of messed up, but it's kind of true. I mean, it's we're gonna see probably surplus showing up, like you said, Ratnik, and I would definitely like to get myself some Ratnik. That would be interesting. I would like to see how the other
I
side.
thing that I want to add about this, Ukraine was already famous here in Eastern Europe for gun smuggling and traffic.
Oh
And
yeah,
imagine now, including I've seen a picture. I don't know if it's real or not, from Ukraine with a guy on a bike cycling, and his back was
oh
full of
yeah. He's got a
AKs.
bunch of yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I've seen that. I bet you that's real. I bet you that's real. Yeah.
it's far from impossible
There's going to be some AS Valve park kits getting to the United States soon and some VSSs and stuff. Some people are going to have a field day with that. But yeah, I would.
PKP and so on.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and there's also AK-12 showed up in this fun
Yeah,
this
yeah,
fight.
yeah, yeah.
So which is I know the AK-12 was adopted. I know the Russians were starting to filter them out, but that's surprising to see AK-12s. I mean, that was you know I just before we end this, that blows my mind that we're seeing T. I know the T90 that got destroyed, the one that they blew up. I'm assuming it's with an RPG or an NWA. It was abandoned and then they destroyed it after the fact. But if that actually did happen again, it was definitely a T90. That part I can confirm, but who knows? But that's just. I mean, I don't know if it's confirmed, but I remember there was a T80 UK that was abandoned. And T80 UKs are, I think, battalion or regimental commander tanks.
Very rare
So
ones as far as I know.
yeah, so it's like that being abandoned is that's weird as well. So and again, I can't stress that enough to people that there is Soviet equipment being used, but some of this stuff is Russia's better equipment. So it's I mean, just them using their caliber cruise missiles. How many? They don't have the economy to maintain sending a ton of cruise missiles at Ukraine. That's not cheap. It's not like the United States where we're like, oh, there's an airfield that needs to be bombed. We'll throw 144 tomahawks at it or whatever we do. It's just something that we do because we have the nice industrial military complex to back us up. And and that's what we do. And I think that's the jump on that point from earlier talking about not learning from the United States. We don't just bomb targets. We obliterate targets. We overkill targets. We just throw as much as we can at it and then go, okay, now we're going in. And that's how we've always seemed it. We've done that since at least Desert Storm. That's been but we've always done that. Vietnam, we dropped more bombs in Vietnam, I'm pretty sure, in one bombing campaign than all of World War
Wow.
II. So
Wow.
yeah, I can't remember if it was Linebacker 2 or if it was Rolling Thunder, but one of the two bombing campaigns. I think it was Linebacker 2, and I think it was on North Vietnam. That was when we opened up the floodgates to bombing North Vietnam. We dropped more bombs, I think, on that campaign alone than all of World War II. So the United States is not, we're not, shy about using air power. And I was surprised that Russia, they lost Su-25 Frogfoots in Ukraine. They've lost a couple now, a few. And that's their A-10 to put it in perspective. That
Yeah, yeah.
everyone loves the A-10. That's their A-10 basically, and it's a pretty survivable aircraft too, like the A-10. So seeing that get shot down, before we go, because I keep saying that, but the craziest part about this, from where is their anti-air, their SEAD? Where's their SEAD, their SEAD? It doesn't seem like they're using it. It doesn't seem like they're using anti-radiation missiles to take out. I know some of it's man pads, so there's not much you can do about man pads, but there's got to be some I know I've seen Strelas, the Strela based MTLBs. There's that one driving around Kiev, running over people and stuff. Um, because that was everyone talked about that being a Russian vehicle, and that was a Ukrainian MTLB with a Strela on it. Uh,
Yeah.
that was not a Russian vehicle. That was a Ukrainian. Why it swerved, I don't know. I mean, I've heard multiple different takes on it. It's a terrible situation. The guy survived, so it's at least the guy survived, which is wild to me. He gets run over by an MTLB. Um, and it is. I will say it's funny seeing the Russians use so many MTLBs because the MTLB is the M13 to Russia. So like U.S. has the M13, which is just an aluminum box. The MTLB is literally that for Russia, and it's like it's an aluminum box. There's nothing to it. That's why you keep seeing these photos of them where there's like a track link left and like a piece of metal scrap sticking out. And that was an MTLB at one point because it just got obliterated, probably by a javelin, but maybe an MLA. So it's just, I think that's wild. So we've gone for 40 minutes. I think we've set our piece on this. Well, I don't think we have set our piece because this is not ending. The situation is terrible in Ukraine. I just want to make sure that's said. I want to thank you for coming on and talking and giving your perspective because I think it's
My
important.
my pleasure.
Yeah, dude,
Thank
because
you for inviting me.
I think you have a unique perspective on this because again, most of the people that watch this podcast from the analytics tell me is they're from the United States, and I think we in the United States get a very I think we get a very weird version of the world, and unless you're really paying attention, you don't fully see the picture always.
May I add one thing? I'll make
Yeah,
it as
sure.
short as possible.
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
think I've told you this in private on Instagram. But at on the first day or second day of the war, a Ukrainian Su-27 uh, came into Romanian airspace. It was escorted uh, somewhere in Romania at a military base, and after a week or so, he was released. He was fully equipped. No rocket was shot. No bullet was shot. A lot of people thought he's a traitor. Some people said that he didn't have a place to land, a place where to land. We don't know why he came here actually, but a few days ago he was released with his plane, but
Hmm,
with no rockets, no ammo, only fuel. And guess what? It was escorted by Ukrainian planes after he crossed the border. So there's still some Ukrainian Air Force.
interesting.
Yeah,
That is, yeah, I do remember you saying that. Yeah, that's interesting that's because when you told me that all you knew was that he was, landed and you didn't, that's an interesting update on that. That they just, it's weird that they sent him back with nothing. Like, aren't we
I
arming the Ukrainians? Like, why would he send them back? I mean, I guess if he
I
was a
think
deserter,
I think it's like an international law or something like that. Maybe if they would send him back with the rockets and all of the equipment, maybe Russians would say, "Oh, okay, so you can go to Romania
yeah,
to like
rearm, yeah.
a neutral country." Okay, they don't seem so neutral right now.
Yeah, I guess yeah, that's a good point. That could be it. Russia could see it as, oh, you're going to Ukraine. Ukrainians are going to Romania to rearm. What is this? What is this happening? Yeah, no, I get
Yeah,
that. That makes sense. It's funny to think about that we're like convoys of trucks full of like anti tank rockets are crossing the border, but they're like, hey, you got to go back without your missiles. Sorry. We'll put them on a
yeah,
truck though. They probably put them on a truck and sent them back over. But like, it's just the concept of it. It's bizarre. All right. Well,
yeah.
I think we'll end it. This will be going hopefully live today. I'm just gonna edit it real quick, throw it up
Oh,
there.
great.
So, and then I will be, you'll see it and stuff. But I hope everyone enjoyed this take. I hope everyone understands our opinions on this and stuff. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can comment and stuff and talk about it. That's cool. Um, Try to keep it civil. And that's pretty much it. So I'm just gonna say, that's thanks for coming on, and we'll see you next episode, which hopefully will be good. So see you later, everyone.